Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 118. In this episode, Carl interviews some more amazing guests live at that conference. You won't want to miss it.
This episode of the MS Dev Show is brought to you by Infragistics, providing tools and solutions to accelerate design, development, insights, and collaboration for any organization. All right, right now we're talking on day 3 with Angela Dugan. She's an Microsoft MVP in ALM, if I'm correct?
Correct. Yes.
Application Lifecycle Management stuff.
Yes.
So that is going to come into focus a little bit later with what you talked about this week. But we'd like to talk about that conference. So you're wearing one of those nifty gray shirts. So that means you're a staff member. So
Yes.
what do you do for that conference?
So I've been a part of it, from the very beginning. About a year before the first conference, Clark called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this crazy idea. You want to be a part of it?" And I said, "Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?" So I pretty early on kind of took over, like, hey, we're going to have badges. There's going to be kids. Why don't we give them an opportunity to be creative?
And by the badges, she also means these lovely ribbons.
Yes, there are people who follow me around the conference now because they know I'm the ribbon person, and they're like, "What do you have on you?" But it's fun. It gets people excited. People will talk like, "Hey, where'd you find that ribbon? Why are you wearing this ribbon? I don't have that ribbon." So it's a great way to get people talking too.
And to get people to just start conversations like, why I put pants on today.
Right. We have ribbons for people who play Artemis for come to board game night, which is another thing
Yes.
that I started was having. We always have Monday night as being kind of a free night, and so it's been a while. But if I remember correctly, the first year we had nothing on Monday night. But my husband and I are huge board gamers, and so we brought.
You just brought them along and it became something.
Yes, and it became something. And then I said, hey, let's make this official. Every Monday night is board game night. And so every year it grew and it grew. And then finally it got so big that my husband and I couldn't really handle it on our own. And so I got in contact with a board game store and had them bring their library in this year
And
so that we could actually enjoy it.
That was pretty awesome. So they had just several tables worth of games.
Yes. Yeah. Boardlandia they were a great sponsor this year.
Yeah, so that was pretty awesome. This year you also gave a talk on SAFe.
I did.
So what is SAFe? And as a
So-
developer, why should I be
Why
interested?
should you care? So SAFe is one of many scaled agile frameworks,
Okay.
right? So there have been a lot of talks on agile and Scrum in general at the conference over the years, and SAFe is actually a way that when your company starts to kind of outgrow just, hey, we have more than just 1 or 2 Scrum teams. Maybe we have 10 Scrum teams or hundreds, right?
Yep.
I mean, large enough companies, you could potentially have hundreds of Scrum teams. And so one of the things so I work at Polaris Solutions, and one of the things that we do is we go out to companies and we help them adopt better processes and kind of grow and improve from the inside out. And when we work with larger companies, we needed some structure.
Yep.
And there's a lot of options, right? There's Nexus, Scrum of Scrums, Less. SAFe is just one of them.
Yep.
But it's one that a lot of us have gone through the certification. It's got a lot of really great practices. And so my talk it was interesting because I wasn't trying to get people up to speed on what it was in an hour.
Yep.
There's no way you can
can't.
do that. Right. It's just too big.
It's like, what is it?
Right. So my goal was, at a high level, what is SAFe, right? So slightly longer than what I just went through. And then talk through what are some of the good practices, what are some of the roles you would want to think about, what are some of the things that you need to do to start scaling, what are smart ways to scale. Even if SAFe isn't necessarily the right thing for you, here are some practices you can draw from it.
Yeah, because I've been at a place, maybe not quite the hundreds, but I've been at a place that grew from 6 to 8 to 10 Scrum teams. And, that's where you start being like, well, this isn't in the book and the tests that we all took. And how do we do this? We're seeing this pain here and we want to
Right.
fix it, but we still want to be agile.
Right. Right. And the other thing that comes into play is it's not just about the scrum teams, it's also about the organization as a whole. So once you get to a point where you have multiple scrum teams, especially when it's that large, you have things like very large project management offices. They have very specific directives that don't necessarily play really well with agile concepts.
Yes.
How do they budget in an agile way? How do they forecast what they're going to work on for the next 5 years? That's like a big, huge anti-agile thing, right? Is trying to plan for 5 years. And so some of the things that SAFE talks about is how do you have those conversations? What are some ways to allow them to be more agile without trying to get them to convert to Scrum, right? Because that's not going to happen.
So yeah, that sounds like, I think where a lot of places either are at or are about to be, because a lot of people throughout the last couple of years have kind of taken those Scrum classes, and like I mentioned before, it's like, where do we go from here? So where can we go to learn more information? Maybe not about SAFE, but about ways to scale our current practices up to that next level.
Yeah, so there's a lot of places. So I did post my presentation out on SlideShare. So if you Google me, Angela Dugan, you'll find my That Conference talk. It's a good place to start because I actually have a slide in there that says, hey, if you want to learn more, here's some links, here's some white papers, here's some books, some really good places to start. So that would probably be the easiest place to start. And then I always tell people, feel free to ping me on Twitter or send me an email. I'm happy to answer specific questions and point people in the right direction because it can be an overwhelming topic to start digging into.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving us this overview and awareness of this, because like I said, this is something, at least with the teams and the clients that I work with, you're starting to see some of these pain points, and it's nice to know that there are people that are thinking about ways how to evolve this and make this better in a way that fits with kind of what we like about Agile.
Absolutely.
So are you working on anything else that you care to talk about right now, or?
I mean, I'm on a lot of conference committees, so if that counts. I mean, I guess if you don't mind me plugging another conference that's coming up.
Plug whatever you want.
Yeah.
This is your time.
So I am actually on the committee for St. Louis DevUp, which used to be St. Louis Days of .NET. That's actually coming up in October. And I was the curator of the Agile track, and we've got some really amazing talks in there as well. And so I want to make sure people are aware of it because it's also like that conference, right? It was kind of a grassroots movement. Very strong community out there, but not everyone knows about St. Louis Days of .NET, or
So
like I said,
you
now
get
it's
around too, is what you're saying.
I do.
So you're based in Illinois, you're up in Wisconsin now, you run a conference in Missouri.
Yes.
Nice.
I do things in Chicago. I'm also an organizer of Chicago Code Camp.
Excellent.
So, but I'm very involved in the community. I've always been very passionate about kind of giving back. So this is my way to give back to the community. Like, I've got a lot of support over the years, so now this is my way of saying, hey, I'm going to support everyone else. And I love that we have a family track here. I'm so proud of that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for everything that you do. It's a wonderful event. I know everybody that I've talked to has had nothing but very wonderful things to say. So thanks for being a part of it from the beginning.
Yeah. And thank you for being here and giving us some great publicity.
Yeah. So where can people find you online if they want to find more about Angela?
Sure. So I have a website.
Yep.
My blog is tfswhisperer.com. I am Oak Park Girl on Twitter. And other than that, you can also find, sometimes I blog on our Polaris Solutions website, and you can almost always find me at a local user group or at a conference. I'm pretty involved in the community.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Right now we're talking to Jerry Nixon.
Hi, Carl. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you've been on already, and you're going to be on pretty soon again. So we're going to be seeing a lot of you.
I love the MS Dev Show.
That's awesome because we love us too.
Yeah, dude. Hey, you're not the only one. You guys are hitting it big right now. This is your golden years.
Yeah, we are doing pretty good right now.
Yeah.
And you're looking pretty good right now. You've got the nice vest going on.
Oh yeah, that's my presentation vest because I'm about to present.
You're about to present on inclusive design.
A developer's introduction to inclusive design.
So
you ever heard of it?
I have heard of it, but I saw that you were speaking on that, and my first thought is, what does that have to do with XAML?
Yeah, it has everything to do with XAML.
Everything to do with XAML. So
the name enable is the namespace. Enable :
So XMLNS.
Inclusive design.
And all right.
It's that easy, and then you've got it working.
All right, that was nice talking to you.
Yeah. It's drag and drop. If you use the designer, it's drag and drop. It's not really, of course. It's really a philosophy. It's not like domain-driven design. Domain-driven design is really a set of patterns for developers to kind of change the way they process. This is really more about a thinking process of you're really identifying too few users for your application. Yeah. So, I picture everybody who uses my application. They have a nice machine. They're not in the rain. They have both of their eyes, and they have plenty of bandwidth. For example,
they got a full Ethernet connection. 100 by 100.
Yeah, and so a lot of times you see inclusive design and accessibility coupled together.
Yep.
But that's not right, because accessibility is really about, if you're blind, what are the tricks or what are the things that developers can do to make it more accessible to you? If you can't hear, what are the things that developers can do to make it more accessible to you? But inclusive design isn't about that at all. It's really about identifying or just being able to recognize that the app you're building or the software you're building is really geared towards a small use case. Even if you have 20 use cases, you've really narrowed them down environmentally. Socially, there are use cases where you could be in a crowd, or you could be alone, or you could be in a library where it needs to be quiet, and all of a sudden you're chirping or whatever. So that's a kind of use case that you have to think about around inclusive design. So it's not about ability and disability. It's really about context. And so another one would be, I'm on a bus, or I'm in a bus, or I'm on a train that goes through a tunnel, and so I need that use case as well. Because what if bandwidth is really, really generous, but it's only occasional? All these other pieces as well. So there's a lot to it as well. There is definitely what if you can't hold your hands still, right? What if you have a thing where you can't hold your hands still, and your application requires them to press and hold? Well, it's just not possible for them. What if the way you've decided to alert that a long-running process is finished is you play a nice tone? Well, everybody that can't hear suddenly don't know that it's finished. So you want to think about all of those cases as well. Inclusive design is really just a new way of thinking. It's not a new way of thinking. Yeah. It is a new way of thinking in the modern world, right? Because if you think about buildings, like if you're in a wheelchair, and you're trying to get into a building, and that building is inaccessible to you, not because of your wheelchair, because of the stairs. The stairs are what made it inaccessible. The designer of that building, you can have one man, sure. I just love it.
This is awesome. I love the kids who come up here. And you know what? Most of them ask if they can have it. It's not just like a
like adults who feel like they're entitled to them. They have a bag, and they're like, one of this, one of that, one of that.
Did I get everything?
Then they don't even use it. They go home, forget they have it. No. Put it on eBay.
So, could social aspects? I'm just trying to think. Like over here, we might try to be cute and cheeky in an application. Like, don't be. If you like this, it's a free app, but buy me a beer. Whereas if I'm trying to sell this in the Middle East,
right?
That
language alone is a terrific inclusion piece because. We think about 450 million people speak English as their first language, and about 350 million speak it as their second language. That leaves about 6 billion that don't speak it at all. Yeah. And what's even more interesting about that is 80% of the internet as a whole is written in English. Right? It's crazy. And if you look at penetration, 50% of all users come from Asia in the internet, and as far as penetration, Asia is only 49% penetrated right now. So in America we're like 98%. It's some great number, But there, if you think they're already half of the internet, and they're only half penetrated, and none of the internet really caters to the language that they are. So of course they are going to be tailored to, or naturally drifting towards sites and apps that cater to them, and it's a small percentage, but it kind of creates an opportunity as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if you had an app that was written in Chinese, you would have so much more opportunity, especially as time passes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So inclusive design really is about being nice to people. It's about like empathy. Because here's another great example. In Windows, you can go into settings, and you can do this in your Mac too. You can go in and you could turn off animations. And so now all of the things that are like hoop-de-doo inside Windows are immediate, and they take away all the animations. Developers can query for that and know whether or not that's turned on or turned off at a system level.
And then they can respond to it.
And they can respond to it because often an animation, like sometimes when you don't have that issue, you don't realize how painful it can be to see things move in a way and you just can't keep up anymore. And so just simple things like that developers can do. Language is easy enough because the multilingual toolkit, you've seen that probably.
Yeah, we just talked about it. Lori Lalonde, we talked about localization and globalization recently.
Oh, yeah, nice. How'd you differentiate local and global?
So localization is really more like the language.
Yeah.
And globalization is making your app aware and respond, being built in a way where either you can make it left to right or right to left. Leaving room for letting things flow around. So when things do change, when it's a 3-letter word in English and like a 52-letter in German.
Yeah. You got to have space for it. You got to dial it down. And you want to change things like currency. And sometimes inclusive design and globalization are very similar in that sometimes you have to change the metaphor because, I'm going to have a metaphor inside my application that you hit it with a hammer or you cut it with a knife or, whatever. And, in where you live, that is so offensive. I had no idea that was offensive. You know what I mean? And so sometimes it's not just language that needs to change. Globally, as you go from culture to culture, you might actually need to shift some metaphors inside your application. So that's it as well.
Yeah, so when I brought to you that beer idea before, it really made me think. Put a steaming mug that looks like it's because how many people would think of
drink
coffee?
Steaming mugs of beer?
No, of coffee or tea.
Oh, right.
Because that's coffee and tea is the same image.
Of a cup like this.
You have a cup like that? That's awesome.
Ah, it's nice.
I wouldn't put a steaming beverage in there. But if you have a steaming cup that represents coffee or tea, and now all of a sudden, instead of beer, which might be excluding maybe a quarter of the population, now you have something that probably well over 90% of the people that would use your app think of as, hey, I understand and approve of that.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not so much. I mean, there is definitely a thing you get for free out of it. Like for example, one of the the typewriter, right? If you look at early typewriter prototypes, I forget the guy who created it, but he was doing it because he was trying to make it so that a blind friend of his could write legibly. Email was the same way. The main guy who did email, he was trying to communicate with his deaf wife in a more simple way. And so it's funny because you see all these, if we think about it as inclusion sort of things, this sort of approach really is an engine for innovation as well. Yeah. Because even though he was creating a typewriter for his blind friend to be able to write more legibly, it became a typewriter, and all these things came out of it. And look at email came out of it, and even like bendy straws have a little story behind them about how this guy, his daughter couldn't drink because she couldn't move, and at the table she couldn't drink from her, and so he invented the bendy straw, and now we see them everywhere. And just these little things come along, and you're like, why would I go to the effort of, because if you think about it, if I'm already hitting 90% of my intended audience, what's that 10% really even matter to me? And you may actually be unlocking a gigantic portion that you don't realize because you're about to invent something that's amazing.
Well, it's like our keynoter today. He started off making a product so his deaf dad could see these notifications on his smartphone.
That's right.
And it ended up being a platform for his startup.
Yeah.
So you never know where those little things lead you either.
And so many things are built into Windows that we can take advantage of, like a screen reader is already part of it. You don't have to install that, of course. But it doesn't, it works okay for a lot of apps, but not very well because developers don't take advantage of like automation properties and giving things names and being able and just thinking it through that honestly retrofitting an application that already exists is pretty expensive, but just knowing in advance keeps you from just making those mistakes so that it doesn't cost anything. You enable a larger piece as well, and honestly kind of contribute to a better world. It's kind of weird to say that, but you kind of do, because why should anybody sitting around the table be the one that's excluded, right? Well, that guy, if only you could hear, I would let you use my app. That doesn't make sense, right? It's going to take me another 2 hours, and now you can use it as well. That's worth it.
Yeah.
It's really a mindset change as well. There's some technical stuff you need to know in order to do it right, but really it's a decision that developers and designers make to make their application usable by a larger portion of the population. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. So do you have any resources that we can point maybe anybody to that would want to find out a little bit more about inclusive?
It's crazy. Well, let's dial it down to just accessibility for a second, right? So that's a small part of inclusion, but we'll leave it there. Accessibility is over documented on MSDN, and it's one of those, I would say, if you had like page counters on MSDN,
It gets
it's
the
like,
fewest.
yeah, it doesn't even have a comma, right? And everybody's like, I don't know how to do it. How could I possibly know how to do it? Well, it's because you're not looking. And so accessibility is really, really well documented. And it's a very small set of steps that you really need to do. And it's stuff like contrast colors. Like that's a really important one because a lot of if you look at the spectrum of visually impaired, only a tiny portion are blind. The more of them are, it's just difficult to see, or colorblind is in there as well. And colorblind, here's a crazy stat. 1 out of every 10 guys is colorblind. And there's different ways of colorblind, like yellow colorblind and stuff. But anyway, 1 out of every 10 is colorblind, and 0.5% of girls. It's crazy. So, I mean, just tiny. It's kind of a guy thing. But so let's say your application was going to show, a status complete by shifting red to green. Well, it turns out red and green look exactly the same.
So they wouldn't be able to see it at all.
Right. So, but if you change the flag status, so it looked different, then both people who could see color and people who couldn't see color
Would have a good experience.
Yeah, that's right. So design affordances like that we sort of skip over because we just don't do it for whatever.
And sometimes it's not even like that extreme of a thing.
No.
Yesterday, I showed you my Twitter application that I use. And normally it's kind of like a darker gray background with a lighter gray text. It looks really nice in some soft light. But when you get out in the sun,
it's hidden.
It detects that all of a sudden there's this, a new world that it's in, and you probably can't read that other one, so it switches it to a white background with dark text, which makes it easier to see.
It's so smart to do little things like that because, we could use the word and say, when you're in super bright light with trying to read your phone, in a way, you're disabled at that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a different
disabilities, they don't last for a long time.
It's a temporary disability.
And so being able to cater to you makes the app better for you. And forget about anybody with any visual impairment, right? It actually is better for you, but it turns out people with visual impairment actually benefit from it as well.
And what's also nice is one thing I didn't show you, they actually have a slider where you can adjust where that cutoff is.
Oh, the threshold of it?
So if you did have something where it's just easier for you to be
black on white,
black on white, you can just move it all the way over.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice. And what's great, look at how we're talking about it. We're like, look at these developers, how much love they gave to us through this application. That's the winner, really, is the developer, because as soon as you start adding these features, people don't need to know or even need to think about what other group is this for, because it suits them too, right? It's all these benefits. Like I can tell you, many, many times I have messed with the scale of Windows to make it higher or lower scale. Sometimes because I'm doing a demo, sometimes because, there's a lot of fun reasons too. And that capability isn't for me. That capability is for people who really have trouble seeing things that are small. And but it's, I'm doing a quick touch demo and I'm showing it off, and I get this benefit that was really written for somebody else. And so it's not really an investment so that we can, like, let's say we're going to do a study and we see that we have 10 users and one of them has trouble using their app in the light. And so now we argue with each other and we're like, well, is 1/10 of all of our users really worth it? And we've kind of blown the whole idea because, for one, people are worth it, but there is an investment cost. But does it play to the other 10 or the other 9 in this case? And that's what inclusive design really is. It's about nobody around the table really needs to be excluded for no good reason. And can you realize that catering to that in a good way actually enables benefits for everybody? And so everybody's a winner in the end. Some sites, some apps are they're driven by the law, there's a lot of legislation about an ADA legislation that requires it. But you and I aren't, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's even the right motivation to do stuff either. It's weird to think how many hours I burn trying to figure out if I could rewrite a for loop any faster, and how many hours I don't burn just adding names to controls that would make it so easy to use. Anyway, so that's what inclusive design is. And that's what we're going to talk about. Gosh, my session's in an hour.
Well, we'll let you have some time to do that.
I need to go meditate.
Yeah. So first of all, I got 2 last things. So
yeah, go ahead.
Where can people find you online?
JerryNixon.com.
JerryNixon.com.
JerryNixon.com. And even though that's the primary place to find me, at MicrosoftVirtualAcademy.com, I've got a billion courses on especially XAML stuff.
Yep.
And so that's an easy place to go find a lot of the content I've created. That's a lot of. It's fun actually coming to a conference because I see people will ask me like, "Where's the bathroom?" Right, and I'll be like, "It's right there," and they're like, "Wait a minute, I've totally watched you in this for hours. We've sat together and you've been teaching me C#, and it's a cool experience. It's even funnier when I go to when I go to Europe or when I see Europeans, they always want to take my picture. It's so funny. I think we actually talked about this once.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
That's actually how we met. Is I was going up to you to say hi and introduce myself, and you're like, "You're Carl from the MS Dev Show."
Bam! Yeah, you're so famous. Oh, that's great.
That's awesome. So,
Which you're easy to spot because your voice is like super specific.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a good voice. It's very, very podcast ready.
Well, it's because I have a face for radio.
That's why we're doing it on video now.
Yes. So the last thing is, what are you working on next? Because I know you're a guy. You're not just working on one thing. What are you doing next? Can you talk about it?
Well, let's see. What am I doing next that I can talk about? Oh, that is tricky. No.
No. Okay.
Isn't that awful?
All right. So we're gonna have
Well,
you
my
on
current
soon.
project, I think what you're thinking of is that I am working on a project, but it's an internal project.
Okay.
It's a DRM project.
All right. So we'll talk about that next time you're on.
Yeah,
you'll be
because
on
I'll
soon.
publish it and it'll be.
All
yeah.
right.
Well, we're gonna talk. What are we talking about?
Xbox.
Oh, yeah, deploying UWP on Xbox One.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome actually. And Darren will be there, and it's always a good time with Darren.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
All right.
Hey, look at our pictures being taken.
Hey, we're doing it live
Just
on
like
video.
you said it. Thanks, Carl.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jerry. Thanks for being on.
You bet.
So right now we're talking to Seth Juarez. We know you pretty famously for all of your interviews on Channel 9,
Yeah.
flipping the tables a little bit here.
I know it's going to be awkward for me.
But what's not awkward is I don't think many people know, but before you did Channel 9, you did a lot of machine learning stuff.
I did. I actually created a machine learning library called NewML. Before it was called Machine Learning for .NET, but it was a little too long, so I changed it. I copied the NuGet teams, NuGet, and I called it NewML. And if you go to newml.net, you can find the library there. But then I also talk about general machine learning.
Yeah. So you've been doing machine learning for quite a while now. How long's it been?
I don't know. See, like I studied it in school, and I've applied it to some problems, but I don't consider myself like a full-fledged, like, tried and true data scientist because I don't write real code. I write like demoware, or there's only like one thing that I've written that's actually in production right now that I've written recently because I write a lot of demo, but I do build machine learning models and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, a lot of us, we think of machine learning, we're like, that is out of our hands. So, what are the basics of machine learning? What do we need to get going with it?
So I don't think it's as confusing as people make it out to be. The first thing that you have to do is you have to come up with a sharp question. And usually those questions involve, like, for example, how much or how many, which class does it belong to, how do we group things, is it weird? And the last one is, do I want to recommend something? And those are really the only 5 questions that you can ask in machine learning. Once you've done that, then you need to start thinking about, okay, what data do I have? So you need to start identifying your data sources, and then you need to start like looking at your data to see if it will even work. And then you need to do some analysis on your data. And once you've done that, then you can start to build models and do machine learning. But sometimes you get to like the analysis of the data and you already know what's happening and there's no need for machine learning. So you always start with a sharp question and then you go all the way down to building models down at the end if you need to.
So I guess that's one key thing that I haven't really heard about before. Sometimes you can look at your data and realize that you don't need it.
Yeah.
So really, you mentioned your grouping, counting. To me, those are a lot of like SQL-y kind of things you can kind of do anyways. What's the different take that machine learning has on that?
So the thing about it is, like, for example, when it comes to grouping, imagine having a group by clause where there is no where.
Okay.
Like, that's illegal in SQL.
Yep.
But in machine learning, you can create groups just based upon the characteristics of the data. And that's very important. For example, here, let's talk about recommendation. When you want to recommend something, you need to be able to group things. Like, for example, there's 2 types of recommender systems. One is content-based recommendation, and the other is it's just went out of my head. But it's where you're using other people to help make sort of the recommendation, and it just went out of my head what it is. But for example, you need to be able to group content or items into groups.
Yep.
How do you group them? And so that's what one of the grouping things will answer. And once you've grouped them, you can say, okay, well, if you bought one from this set, then you might like the other set. The other type of recommendation is called collaborative filtering, which is where I'm Jim and you're Bob, and okay, Jim and Bob are similar. Jim really likes this thing that Bob hasn't bought, so we should let him buy it. Notice that involves grouping as well, right? And so notice that if you have a group by clause with no where, that's where machine learning comes in. It will find the groups for you. The other thing that you mentioned is, like, for example, classification. SQL Server can't do that because you might have some data that says, for example, here's a row of data about, I don't know, let's say cancer patients.
Yep.
And you have sort of a bunch of features about, their temperature was this, their skin color was this, and this and that. And then they had cancer or they didn't. Notice that you'll have those records, but given a new record that doesn't have that, whether they have cancer or not filled out, how do you predict that? Notice there's no SQL query to do that.
Yeah.
And so you got to sort of put that into the system and have it learn a way to detect whether or not it has cancer. But it has to fall into those 5 kinds of questions.
All right, that's pretty awesome. So, obviously this is a field that's progressing pretty rapidly.
Sure.
So what has changed in the last couple of years to make this more approachable?
So here's the thing. I don't think machine learning people really care about approachability. I don't know why. Yeah. Like, I wished we'd be more approachable about it. I try to give talks that are more approachable. But one thing that has changed is in the 90s, neural networks were very popular.
Yeah.
But it turns out that they wanted to make more deeper neural networks, and our computers couldn't handle them. So they switched over to these things called support vector machines, and they became really popular. But now, because our computers can handle more computational power, now you're hearing about deep learning, which is neural networks but deeper, right? And they do some interesting things. And so there's like these cycles that you kind of go through in and out of machine learning. But in essence, it's finding really clever ways of answering one of those 5 questions. Mm-hmm. How much, how many, does it belong, which group does it belong to? The other one, I had them all in my head and it just went out. So how much, how many, what group does it belong to? Is it weird? Do I recommend something, or can I create artificial groups? So those 5 questions.
Right. So is there a good resource if we want to find out more about this that you recommend?
Well, there's a couple of books that you can look at. One of them that I found that's kind of an older book is called, I think it's Programming Collective Intelligence. It's an O'Reilly book. It's an older one. It's really good at explaining these things and how they work. The one that I like that I use to implement algorithms is called, it's written by Christopher Bishop, but it's called Pattern Recognition and Machine Learning. PRML is how they... And it's a really good book if you want to know the math behind it. These things tend to get a little mathy, but like, I don't know. I'm a math minor in college, but I didn't consider myself a math person. And I feel like once you start using math as a tool, and less as I need to know how to use this math, then it becomes a little bit less sort of intimidating, in my opinion.
Awesome. So, one of the questions that I'm trying to ask everybody here as well, too, is, this is not your first that conference, right? You were here last year?
I've been here like 3 or 4 years. Oh. I think I've been to all of them except for one.
Okay. So what is your opinion on that conference? How do you
I like it. I mean,
how do you feel about it compared to other conferences as well?
Well, comparison is kind of hard. I've known Clark for many years, and I like Clark's style of just like, let's just sit down and have a chat kind of thing. And I feel like a lot of his personality is sort of blended into that conference. And so I like the whole, like when I gave my talk, I'm like, oh, if there's not a lot of people here, let's just scoot up and let's just have a chat.
Very informal.
Yeah. And then they're very serious about the open spaces, which are just happening here right next to us if you're listening. And so I like the informality of it all, because it's a really good way to feel comfortable with things that perhaps you aren't comfortable in. And that's what I like about that conference.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for being on, Seth.
Hey, thanks for having me on, my friend.
Infragistics' ultimate UX and UI tools and enterprise mobility solutions, SharePlus and ReportPlus, enable high-performance apps on any device, faster data insights, simplified collaboration, and market-leading security, all backed by comprehensive support. With Infragistics' ultimate UX and UI development toolkit, you can ensure mission-critical applications delivering a superior user experience on the desktop, web, and native device environments for iOS and Android. with the latest BI tools, wow your users with dashboards providing the data insights that they need when and where they need it, all at a low total cost of ownership. Try it today. Download a free trial at Infragistics.com and follow them for the latest updates in UX and UI development, reporting, and collaboration at Infragistics on Twitter. And remember, each week, if we pick your comment on the show, you will get a free copy of Infragistics Ultimate UX and UI Toolset.
Right now, we're talking with Tony Gebel. He's going to be speaking later on this week on Angular 2.
Yes.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
So, first of all, is this your first year at that conference?
No, it is my 5th year.
It is your 5th year.
I've been here for all of them.
That's awesome. So, being here 5th years, have you just attended, spoken, combination of each?
This is my 2nd year speaking.
Second year speaking?
Otherwise, it was just attending.
Yeah. So what do you like about that conference?
So I heard this last night, and I've been stealing it ever since. Is a lot of people are like, you go to a conference, you sort of just learn some tech and hang out. And somebody said last night that this one feels more like a family reunion. You come in and meet all the people you haven't seen in a year or haven't seen recently, and sort of like just hang out and meet all your friends and family again. It's kind of weird. It's kind of nice though. Really.
So have you brought your family this year?
Yes, they are around here somewhere. And we'll be hitting up one of the family sessions in like an hour.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit what you're going to be trying to get across about Angular 2.
Sure. So my talk is called Out with the Old, In with the New, comparison Angular 1 and 2. So the whole premise of the talk is there was a lot of FUD around Angular 1 and Angular 2 and the differences and whatnot. And I kind of wanted to demonstrate that it's really not that bad. I mean, yes, you can't jump easily from one to the next, but mindset-wise, you're going to be pretty okay.
So what really are the differences between Angular 1 and 2 on a high level?
The highest level is everything is kind of moved to a component architecture. So you want to have small pieces that do kind of one thing instead of having like these giant controllers. So there's a lot of dislike of Angular 1 just because it's really easy to have a giant view and a giant controller, and then that's your kind of your whole app. Where in Angular 2, there's more of a separation into just smaller chunks and kind of pushing that idea. Some of the other parts that's really neat is it's all like JavaScript classes and ES6 support, or ES 2015, whichever one we're using these days. What else is there? There's a whole bunch.
So when you say that it's it's more componentized, does that mean it's also maybe a little bit less opinionated as well?
Yeah. So you have things like Ember that have really strong opinion, and maybe something like React that has less of an opinion. Angular is, I still feel, right in the middle. Their CLI that they're releasing is kind of gets you started, but they don't limit you and say you have to do it this way. So like if you like Webpack, you can use Webpack, or if you like System.js, you can use System.js, or testing frameworks is a good one too. Like if you like Jasmine, they kind of push Jasmine, but Mocha works too, and they're trying to basically support whatever the developers want to use, but still have your typical templating for Angular and your services and your classes to do your work.
So, you said one of the main things you're doing is kind of like showing the differences between the two. So if I have an Angular 1 application, what kind of work is needed for me to convert that to 2?
Sure. There is a way to run them side by side. So if you are migrating over from 1 to 2, you can run both Angular 1 and 2 on the same web page.
So you could kind of make a slow transition.
Yes.
That's nice.
There's some caveats and catches with that. It's highly dependent on how you wrote your Angular 1 code. If you have a giant controller and a giant view, maybe not so much. But if you had, you kind of broke out your web page into components and use that model and sort of use some of the newer pieces that are in Angular 1, you'll have a better time running them side by side.
That's pretty awesome. Anything else that you want to tell us about Angular or that conference?
You should come to that conference. And Angular 2 is way better than Angular 1.
So if we passed over Angular 1 for whatever reason, we should definitely give 2 a try.
Yes, I am, full disclosure, not a fan of Angular 1. I have some tweets and stuff that's out there that prove that. Angular 2, I'm on board. And so and the one other thing, like if you're picking between React or Angular 2, it's really hard now because they are similar. They are like that similar. There's some just minor differences that
So
it's kind of up to the developer at
So
that
if we're
point.
starting a brand new file, new project kind of application, React and Angular 2 are
Pretty comparable at this point.
pretty comparable. Kind of nothing really stands out a whole lot about each one for the pros and cons.
Yep, I joke that it's basically picking a templating engine. It's more than that, but at some level, that's one of the main choices you're making is what templating engine you want to use, the JSX for React or the Angular templating with the directives in your HTML.
So are you using Angular or React, anything in the projects that you're working on?
At the company I work for, we use both. Right now, I'm more in the Angular 2 learning and understanding and playing around. I use it in some of my personal projects as well.
All right, it was nice talking to you. Where can we find you online?
I am online most everywhere under Ubert, at Ubert, OOBERT. Otherwise, my website is geekwithopinions.com, where I sometimes write.
All right, nice talking to you today, Tony.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Today we're talking to Max Milner. He gave an awesome talk on building programming your Lego robot. Hi, Max. How you doing?
Good.
So, first of all, how old are you?
I'm 11.
You're 11 years old, and you gave a talk to a bunch of kids and adults here. So, how did you come across this opportunity? What made you want to give a talk on Lego programming?
Well, I'd done this Lego robotics for 3 years, and my dad has spoken for a couple of years at this conference, so I knew that, and I kind of wanted to do this for a little bit, and now I chose to do it this year. And
That was pretty awesome. So I don't know if you saw me while you were giving your talk, but I was sitting there with a few of my kids, and I was pretty motivated by some of the things you said. You brought up quite a few things that I didn't even think of. So one of the things that you mentioned was that like when you're actually building your robot, that you want it to have like as little contact as possible. So can you explain to everybody why?
so with the contact points, the more you have on the ground, the less accurate your robot will be because it could cause drag, or it just won't be, like it won't turn as well because there will be more drag, or it won't drive forward as accurately because there will be more drag.
Yeah. So, like I said, one of my kids there was 8 years old, and he was really motivated. So I think we're gonna have to buy some Legos, the kit that you mentioned, and get going on that. So, how did you prepare for doing a talk like this?
Well, I had to come up with like an idea for like what I wanted my thing to be themed after. So since this is like a kind of like a summer camp kind of themed conference, I came up with like camping and stuff like that. So that's why I had some camping themes to it, and then I also had it and when I was just working, I was trying to think about all the aspects that I was interested in and did, and I could give good solid information on. Then I made a presentation based on that, and like what I could give information based on, and the things that I knew about and the things that I'd done.
So, how long have you been making Lego robots?
I've been doing it competitively for 3 years, and we got like maybe 4 or 5 years ago we got like the actual robot kit, just my family, and we were messing around with it sometimes and doing little things, but then when I really got into it was when I did it more competitively.
So when you do it competitively, are you competing or are you with a team?
You're on a team competing. It's like an 8-person team that you compete with in a tournament, and then you practice with them as well.
That sounds like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about working with Legos? I mean, because there's the part where you actually build the robot, or where you design the robot, where you think what you want it to do. There's a part where you're building it, and the part where you're programming it.
Yeah. So
Which part's your favorite?
my favorite is actually like getting to figure out what you want to do and then programming it. The building is just like quick. You come up with basically what I do is I come up with a base, and then I program that base and add things onto that base to make it do better things.
So you were explaining in the session that you called those attachments. So you could have like the same base that would move the same, but if you had to have an attachment to knock something out of the way, you would add that as you needed it.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Is there anything else you want to tell people about Legos, about the programming for them, or about competing?
Well, yeah, I just want to say that if you want to, the competing is kind of a big commitment. So if you want to maybe compete, you should start out with, a small, you should start out maybe trying it out and seeing if you actually like it, because actually competing is a big commitment.
Is it? Yeah, so you mentioned that you had played with it first before you had competed. Where did you find the team to compete with?
Well, firstly, I was on 2 different teams. 3 years ago, my first team was through my school, so I was just able to find it through the school that I was in. And then for the past 2 years, a friend of mine from my school, his dad coaches a team, so they called me and asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said yeah, and so we worked on it together, and I was able to find that team through my friends in school and things like that. But it's really normally they're run through schools, but you can find some run just through different things.
All right, so if people are interested in doing this, they should try to look for their schools and look online and see where the different clubs are for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was really nice talking to you today, Max.
Yeah, really nice
you
being
did
here.
an excellent job. I found a lot of things interesting, and I'm way older than you. So I just wanted to give you great kudos, and I hope to see you again here next year talking about whatever else that you do in the next year.
All right, thanks for having me.
This is my last interview of that conference. Yeah, I saved best for last.
All right, I like that.
So this is day 3 of that conference, and I have a very tired, very hungover, I'm assuming.
No,
not this year?
No,
Not this year?
No.
You got a proper amount of help this year
I
then?
stayed good, yes.
Clark Sell. So Clark, as we all know
Giving away your
from your
swag.
spec, more than happy to have you help.
Here.
So
Keep going, keep flowing. Look at
All
this.
right.
These guys want cups. She didn't want a cup. He wants
Damon
a cup.
wants a cup. All right. But anyways, Clark, you run that conference.
I do.
And
many of us do, but
Hey,
yeah. I'm
you'll-
the head henchman.
You're the head wrangler.
Yep.
And this week was kind of fun. It was the 5th that conference, kind of a milestone in years. That's kind of important. You made it beyond 3, which I think is huge.
Yep. We did.
And one of the things I really liked, just bringing some perspective, is you showed some pictures of the first that conference. The stage completely bare, a banner, one singular in the background, and
4x8 or
and
something.
we obviously see the incremental things every year. They just kind of sneak up on you, but after 5, it's amazing coming from very bare bones but a lot of heart to something that's really looking like
where we are today.
There's just a lot to offer. So
it's been a crazy 5 years. When we did it the first year, it was I don't know, maybe 400 people, a couple kids speaking. We couldn't afford. We didn't have. We were in the hole, to be quite honest with you, coming in the event. And now we've got 1,600 people, and we've got some stage crews here and there, and we fix some road bumps and introduce other ones, and try to refine it each year, get a little better.
So what's the funnest thing that you've done this year? In
terms of prep, or in terms of
either in prep or here, that that's just something new this year that you thought was fun?
Okay, so real, every year we have a huge backlog of things that we always want to do and we try to do. We leave here and we're kind of tired and, move on. But usually, I do all the design stuff with another company and we iterate back and forth on that. And I love doing that stuff. This year, really, really late in the game, like the Friday before we left late, we came up with this idea of the big red button. And for us, we've written the website and the mobile apps and this and that. Like everything that's tech around here, we've built. Even the signs we've built. We physically have built everything. And so the Friday before we were getting ready to leave, I came up with an idea called the big red button. And the big red button is what it sounds. It's an arcade button with a particles photon and a temperature sensor. And we built one of these for every single room to put next to the speaker so that we can measure temperature of the room. And then if they had any AV problems, anything that went wrong, they just smack the button.
If they needed a water.
That's right. And we would come running. And so we have a dashboard that has this thing. And so it's Friday. We're leaving or packing and leaving on Wednesday and Thursday, right? So we have like less than 5 days to kind of pull something off. Well, what did we need? We needed 16 photons, 15 arcade buttons, perma-proto boards, solder, the whole 9 yards. So now we're trying to order and get stuff overnight. And 3 of us built all the boxes. We wrote the software for the firmware for them. We wrote the website, and this is this is total last minute stuff. But here's just, this is where we all have this craft and technology, and it's like, well, we could just do this and make it easy. And it's been, it's got some bumps, but it's been fantastic. Like everybody loves it.
To me, that's just one of the many attention to details that you and your group have just added to just make it a little smoother for everybody. But you've also done a few things to make it fun. One thing that my kids noticed, you got Pokemon, like actual stuffed animal Pokemon. And not only that, it's not that you have it, but they move all throughout. Every now and then, Pikachu will be on the other side, or
I sat down with the kids and we went through Amazon and we had to get the right Poke dudes, Pokemon, Poke girls, and then we've hidden. There's 5, 6, 7 throughout the conference center that we've hidden in various places, and it's fun, right?
Yeah, and to me, this phenomenon is only like a month old, and you found a way to just take the right thing and just make it that much more attention for the kids.
No, I appreciate it. It was nice it was good timing, really.
Yeah. And I do have a confession as well. This year, I only attended kid sessions.
That's good.
That's good. And there's so many of them. There's so many this year, and a lot of them are run by kids themselves.
Yes, this was a big year on the family side. I think we grew by maybe 200 people. We went
half
from
of those are mine. Sorry.
We went from like 15 kids speaking last year to almost 30 this year.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot, and we had the tracks. Younger kid applicable things, and then older kid applicable things. And I say kid, like some of these are young girls that are, 15, 17 years old. So I guess young adults probably more appropriate. But, some were, parent, son, daughter, whatever, doing a kind of a joint thing. But we have 400 kids here. Yeah. And so we took, I don't know, that's probably 8,000 square feet back there. There's 4 rooms that we combined into 2. And each room holds 192 people. So
wow.
If you think of, it doesn't look like that with all the tables and chairs, but that's how many people fit in those rooms. It's been a pretty good turnout.
Yeah. And one of the other things, just keeping it in the family space, I was here 3 years ago during the boardroom night, and we had a blast then, but this year, that room, it's one of the larger rooms here too.
Yep.
It was full. Most of the night, and it's just amazing to see how just every little piece just keeps growing and growing and getting bigger.
Game night's pretty awesome. This year we got to partner with a company called Boardlandia, another local company out of Appleton, close to you. They brought in games, which was really good on us. It gave them exposure. It helped us have broader, diverse games rather than just what we all kind of brought. It was fun. We had robots running around shooting frisbees.
And so many different kinds of robots. Everybody brought
Yes,
robots. Sponsors did.
Yes.
People doing talks did. Just random people having robots.
Yeah, the physical side of the conference seems to be growing every year, right? We see more microcontrollers, we see more robots, we see more like HoloLenses and Oculus and whatever. Like, there seems to be more and more gadgets coming. So I think Pelican cases are probably flying off the shelf these days, so people can pack up their stuff. But yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
It's neat. We actually forgot to set up an Xbox because there was just so much other stuff that people were doing.
And I don't think anybody missed it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it just slipped our minds.
Yeah.
So I guess we got to work on that.
Yeah. So
We can't miss stuff.
anything else you want to talk about this year's Zach conference?
I guess just thank everybody for all the support. We all have day jobs. We do this on the side. We live and die based on how people come and act at during the conference, right? So I think when I opened up on Monday, I said, we've created the stage, we've bought the food, but you make it the experience. Like, everybody has to behave a certain way and choose to shake other people's hands. And so I think a huge thank you to everybody for just kind of embracing that vision and doing it. And then as we go into next year, here I'm leaving you to go talk to these guys to go sign my house away again, that everybody continues to spread the good word. Don't assume that somebody knows, because people don't know.
People don't know.
And it's crazy. There may be 1,000 people here, but people really don't know.
And I think one of the things, I think we said this last year as well. This is one of those like national level conferences.
Yeah.
It is
It's
up
the
there,
national regional thing.
but it's in the Midwest, and that's where I think where you do have a really great reach, but we can always go a little bit further. And there are people that fly from Texas,
we had
Pennsylvania,
a speaker from New Zealand.
from New Zealand. I mean,
He gets the trophy.
and I know last year there was one from Israel.
Yep.
So this is consistent high level people. There was just
And we're always looking for new speakers. Like, we don't just we take a pretty diverse set of people across
and
whatever walk, track,
and I really mean quality more than an individual speaker who comes. It's just the quality that's there.
Yeah.
And I think that it's nice for a lot of us to be able to take either a car or a very short plane ride.
Sure.
To be able to come
Sure.
here.
And we're a bit intentional where we're at, right? You have to leave.
Yeah.
Like, nobody here really works in the Dells,
Yeah.
right?
So the Dells, I think, is like 10 people and a lot
right,
of
and 9,000 tourists. Yeah, I mean, it pulls you away from Chicago or Milwaukee or Madison or Dubuque, wherever you're from, right? Minneapolis. And thus, you can't just go home or go back to work.
Yep.
And that was intentional. Like, I know it's difficult to get here at times. I think we all sat in a ton of traffic through Madison and whatnot. But once you're here, you're immersed into why you're here. And I know it was actually sad to hear that they're putting cell phone towers. They've actually lined the roof, so there's going to be cell phone coverage here finally, which is, on one hand, fantastic. On the other hand, it like bums me out, because it's been this advantage that everybody's like, well, I don't have a cell phone. So you don't see people looking down at their phones because they're useless, right?
Yep.
And so it's good. I mean, it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I really hope that you guys can just keep this going year after year, and it's a lighter load on you guys.
it
as you
gets
get more
easier.
people.
It gets easier every year. That's for sure. Some things get harder. Some things get easier. We're in the scale problems now, right? Like, how do you deal with 1,600 people? Mm-hmm. I mean, we could feed them, but you still got to shuffle them around a convention center. You got to have, T-shirts now aren't like a little box. You need
You need
There are 50 boxes of t-shirts.
you
right?
need you need to get one of those things that hold 5 boxes at a time, so you can cart them around.
Yeah, like we had to buy dollies this year because it was just impossible to move the amount of stuff that needs to be moved and without like physically like dying because we've picked up 900 boxes. So of which this year I took a whole bunch of video of. So I have like
So yeah,
time
that's
lapse
something
of
new.
us. Yeah, I have time lapse of us unloading the truck and reloading the trucks and keynoters and some setup here and there. So I've been doing a lot of, I'll call it rogue YouTubing.
We'll put some links to those in our show notes,
Yeah,
so
it's-
everybody can check those out.
We got some good stuff. I'll get the keynotes out early this year, so that stuff will be up on YouTube. And
That's out on Channel 9 already, I think, or close to.
the keynotes probably are, but we'll put the
Yeah, the special
four,
ones.
the whatever professional ones we've taken. So, but yeah, I mean it's exciting. So
Awesome. Once again, I can't say enough thanks for all that you do for the community and
Absolutely,
for everybody who comes here.
yeah. Well,
Thanks a
thanks
lot,
for
man.
being part of it.
Yeah, we really enjoy it.
Good. You come back next year.
Absolutely.
Bring that co-host of yours. That
Yeah, he's off
seems to-
adulting it.
I
you
mean,
know.
I guess you can replace him with a giraffe.
Yeah, especially if you look right there. I'm not going to mention it, but you know what I'm
It's
talking
the wrong
about.
part of the giraffe.
Yeah, we're facing the back end, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot again, and we'll see you next year.
Sounds great, man. Appreciate it.